Welcome to Cut the Bull, an insightful podcast which addresses the news of the day and the cultural issues plaguing our society, bringing logic and context to these topics and discussing solutions too real for mainstream pundits. Now, here are your hosts, Charles Love, Shamika Michelle, and Wilfred Riley.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Bull. I am Charles Love alongside my co-hosts Shamika Michelle and Wilfred Riley. And our guest this week is Michele Tafoya, four-time Emmy Award-winning sportscaster and host of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you guys.
It's great to have you. I'm hoping to have a great conversation. I was saying before we started recording that I'm a little nervous. These are the harder interviews to do when someone has a podcast and they interview so many people and they talk so much, like, what can we talk about? But with Shamika's crazy and Will's unique approach, we'll find something to talk about.
We won't let it be boring, I promise.
Okay, don't be boring, Michele. That's your only goal.
All right.
Well, one thing I think I want to do is we're going to talk obviously politics and culture and the things that we talk about, but I also want to kind of use you to get some inside tips. You know, we had Jennifer Say on a few weeks ago.
I love her.
Talked about her issues with, COVID and all that. But I'm like, I got a high level exec here. Let's pick your brain about what's going on in the corporate boardroom. So we may do some of that, from the sports arena as we weave through the conversation.
Okay.
But so starting with sports and what you did in your background, you talked about your father's love of sports and how that got you into sports. So talk a little bit about what it was like then. So you grew up loving sports, and you wanted to tie the journalism with sports, and you get this dream job. So talk a little bit about that. But what I want to know is, when you did not really your first local thing, I know you have to work your way up, but what was it like when you covered your first major event, like whether it was an NFL game or Super Bowl, the Olympics or whatever? What was it like that first time?
Oh my gosh. For me, every event was a major event because it was the next one. And it was generally a step above what I had done before. Of the major events, I think probably my first major event was a college football national championship or the Final Four. Mm-hmm. And those come with some extra butterflies for sure, because how many people are out there watching. I had always been better talking about sports than actually executing sports moves. Like Shamika's daughter, who was a basketball player, probably would have crushed me on the court. Mm-hmm. I loved playing, but I wasn't very good. My brother was exceptional as a basketball player, but it was just this love of competition and also this love of being a fan. But once you become a sports reporter, you got to drop the fandom. Like that has to go by the wayside. You are no longer, you can be a fan of the game. You can love watching a game, but you can no longer pick sides. You can no longer, say I'm pulling for this team or that team. So all of that goes away. And that actually is easier on the psyche and emotionally. It's a whole lot easier than, some of the cheering I did growing up for the 49ers. But so I would just say that those big events, you wake up in the morning and it's like you're about to take a really tough exam, and it's going to be fun, it's going to be challenging, but you really hope you've prepared to pass that, not only pass that exam, but excel. So I've had so many different opportunities and I've been so lucky to do so many big events. And they were all just a little bit different. They were all my first Olympic Games. I was the late night host. That was in a studio. It was different. So much of my career was live events. It was being on a sideline, covering an event that was actually happening. So all I can tell you is that it was an amazing kind of a dream career. Did I get to do everything I wanted? Probably not. But I got to do more than most people ever dream about. And I feel so lucky for that.
Did you have any rituals that you did or something you did to prepare before all the big events that you were covering?
I was just a research. I was dogged at my research, and I prepared. I made sure that when I walked into that arena, that stadium, wherever, that I knew what I needed to know. And believe me, every game that changed. oh, I learned something new. Now I need to go in with this too. Now I need to know, no, you know what I need to do? I need to talk to the kickers before the game. That would help me too. You know what I need to do? I need to know how many concussions every single player on this roster has had in their career. I got to prepare that.
Wow.
So every week was like you added something. I liken it to, if you just keep doing what you've always done, you're not going to grow. You're not going to get better. And so I was always looking to improve. And I think too, before that first hit on the air, especially when I got to Monday Night Football and Sunday Night Football, I really had to take some deep breaths before that camera went on. I made sure that I had really committed to memory that first opening on camera, because that was something that was prepared. It was not a reaction to something. It was a storyline. So I think those were really the only rituals that I can remember. Someone once told me, baseball players, for example, have these superstitions. They got to get out of bed with the right foot first. They got to put on their left sock first, and they got to leap over the baseline before they walk on it. But the problem with that is if they forget to do it one day, then they psych themselves into believing, oh my God, I forgot to put my socks on the right way. I'm going to flounder at the plate. And then they flounder at the plate. So I kind of taught myself that, those kinds of rituals were probably best left on the side and not done.
Will, any sports questions you have to ask?
Yeah, well, a couple things actually. So like I have some of those stories about ritual. I mean, like I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little bit stitious. And I used to be one of those annoying dudes before like track meets or games. Like I would wear the same socks and all that type of stuff. Like my mom, my girlfriend absolutely hated it. And they're all kind of crazy rituals. We had one guy, and this is cross country. This isn't a very, very intense sport. Although I mean, I guess it's not one of the most fun ones. But who would like ritualistically throw up before every big meet?
Like he made himself throw up?
Yeah, he'd make himself throw up. He would just like there was a level of nervous tension if it was sectionals or something like that, where he would want to. He'd kind of make himself, and this would go on for like 10 minutes, and then he would just come back very calm. And then he would come back very calmly, like we're about to kick some ass, boys. So I mean, that's at least I never got stuck with that one. But
you know what? Just on that, Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison used to take what Peyton told us was a nervous pee before every game.
Yeah, that's
so there you go. That's a nervous pee.
Really common. Like I've been on panels with speakers who would get up 1 second before they had to talk, go pee. Everyone else is just sitting there waiting. Come back. Charles has been at some of these too. Sit down, and then they're ready to go. So those things, it's almost like Pavlov's dog. Like if you can avoid it, it's great. But
I think they're nervous that if they get up there speaking, they're doing the public speaking, and they get nervous that a little might come out and they have a spot on it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd
maybe not Peyton Manning, Michelle, but I think the speakers will.
Piss on myself on television, given the options. I mean, like but just I think that's avoidable. But I mean, unlike some of the guests where we're kind of grilling them about their politics, I remember we once talked about the bring back colonialism. I mean, in this case, most of my questions are just sincere interest about the business. Like, do you have a best story from your time covering sports? Like anything that really sticks out? Something crazy at an event? Anything along those lines?
I mean, the two that pop right into my mind right away are I was on Monday Night Football when Brett Favre was with the Vikings and was going to face the Green Bay Packers for the first time. And it was going to be Brett Favre and the Vikings against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. And it was being played in Minnesota. I happen to live in Minnesota. I was the sideline reporter on the game. The tension, you could cut it with a knife. As soon as this was back in the old Metrodome, walked in there that day and I could feel it was like strange. Like the air felt weird in there, like the tension was palpable. And this was before anyone even showed up. I mean, I just walked in the building and went, something feels weird today, in a great way, but just unbelievable. Brett Favre is going to face Aaron Rodgers and the Packers? Really? And I remember my boss telling me before the game, he said, look, if the Vikings win and Favre is the winning quarterback, you get to interview him for as long as you want after the game. I was like, yes. So, deep down, I'm kind of going, that's the storyline I want, because I want to cover that. And so that's what happened. And the commotion around Brett and me when I was doing that post-game interview, I actually have a picture of it because someone took a picture. And it's really, you just see kind of me holding the mic up to Brett and surrounded by, I mean, more cameras than I've ever been surrounded by in my life, because that moment was so incredible. And so, I remember asking Brett in the interview, you become the first quarterback in the NFL to beat all 32 teams now. And he said, well, you got to be remembered for something. I'm thinking, it was great. It was a great answer. And so that's one of those just momentous occasions. The other one was not as fun. It was Gary Kubiak, who was then the head coach of the Houston Texans, who collapsed on the field at halftime, and we didn't know what was going on. And I had to turn from being like a game reporter to a medical correspondent. This was a breaking news story that none of us had ever dealt with before. And it required a whole new level of calm and focus and purpose and decision-making. And it was wild. So, I mean, those two are the first that just jump to mind as being some of the most amazing stories.
Well, both of those are interesting. The second one is because, back when I was a sports fan, I was a big Denver Broncos fan. So obviously I remember that with Gary Kubiak. But the first one, I thought when you said Brett Favre, I thought you were going to say the Monday Night Football game, the first game he played after his father.
No, I wasn't yet. That was the year before I became a sideline reporter on Monday Night Football. So that was Lisa Guerrero, actually, who did that interview after that Monday night game. And that was remarkable, too. I mean, Brett has had so many remarkable moments in his career. It's ridiculous.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I had no idea that he actually played football until last week when Jason interviewed him. I thought he was just a man that stole welfare.
The funniest thing about that, I actually remember the exact game you're talking about, Michelle, because I'm a Chicago Bears fan to the extent I cheer for an NFL team. And I remember like my boys in the few people I know in the Twin Cities area were ridiculing me about this. Like, yeah, how do you feel about this? Like, one Hall of Fame Packers quarterback is playing against the next Hall of Fame Packers quarterback. Like, who do you guys have down there? And this is at a time when the Bears had gone through, which still continues, like 12, 14 quarterbacks. So
I know.
I know exactly what you're referring to.
Yeah. It was amazing. And at that time, that night, that game became the most watched television show in the history of cable television. And so, that was remarkable as well. And so we all got, Brett signed footballs for all of us that said that most watched game in cable history. So it was just, it was a storyline that everyone was talking about. And to have that kind of front row seat and then to be able to talk to Brett afterward was crazy.
Wow. That is, I mean, their whole career, it had to be just amazing to do that. As I say, we're going to bridge into culture and politics and all that kind of stuff. And what you do now is just, remarkable to me. I mean, I have to say, not just having respect for you, you're like a hero to me.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to tell you why. It's not because of what you speak. There's a lot of people out there I love for a lot of different reasons that are speaking out against some really crazy things that are going on. But there's a very short list of people, I put myself on that list, of course, that are speaking out that didn't have to, right? That's what's unique, right? I mean, I've talked on the show before about, I got respect for him, but like a Brett Weinstein. Brett Weinstein does great work at the Dark Horse and that kind of deal. But why did he come out, right? Because they told him, they came for him, right? So all these people being canceled and standing up against that, I mean, it's kudos to them for doing that, but probably wouldn't be speaking had it not happened. And you are the rare case that, whatever reason, that hopefully we'll get to that, about why you decided to do this, but you weren't canceled, you weren't fired, none of that stuff happened. Something just told you that you needed to speak out, and you decided to do it. And what's amazing about it, it's kind of planned in a sense. It's not like you just quit abruptly, right? You worked a year and a half or so after you gave notice saying that you were leaving. So what made you make that shift at the height, when you didn't get to do those things you wanted to do before? What'd you say, Shamika?
I said, I know.
All right, let's hear your version, Shamika. Let's see how much you know. Go.
Well, I know that you said, thinking about your children, like you felt like you needed to speak up because this was going to affect kids, the way America was going in this downward spiral that was happening. Being a mom, you felt compelled to actually stand up and say something about it.
That is that was a major factor. You're absolutely correct. Look, after I got married and 9/11 happened, and that shook me to my core. I don't know about you guys, but it was like, this could happen to our country. Are we more fragile than I realized? But now what I see happening is not an attack from the outside. It's an attack from the inside. That's the way I look at what's breaking down right now in our culture. And I continue to see this happening. And certainly in sports, it was happening. It was ruining sports for a lot of people. And then I had kids, and I thought, what is their future going to be like? Like, seriously, there are indications in this country that some people would like us to become a socialist nation. Oh my God, I can't leave my kids that. I can't. I love my kids so much, and they're going to love their kids so much. And I can't, if that's going to happen, I'm going to fight like hell. And so I knew I couldn't really do that while I was doing my sideline reporting. It would court controversy for the show. And look, Sunday Night Football was the #1 show on television. It probably still is. And I respected that I couldn't really say everything I wanted to say without bringing some negative attention to the show. So I said, okay, that's fine. Then let's pick a time here. Cause I just can't do this anymore. I can't keep quiet anymore. I'm just that kind of person. It was pulling at me. I reached for my shirt here because it felt, honestly, when I'd wake up in the morning, like something was going, you gotta go do this because you can't let this happen. And so, look, I've thought about running for office. I got another phone call yesterday asking me to run for Senate in Minnesota. I don't know that that's going to happen. What I do want to do, though, is I do want to be part of the solution. I do want to try to have the conversations and say, you want to cancel me? Go for it. Try. You can't, because I've prepared for this moment. I can say whatever I want to say. A podcast would be pretty hard to cancel. YouTube has struck down a couple of my podcasts because they didn't comport with their COVID policies.
Right. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. But I got one other follow-up since the other Michelle answered that question. But let's see if you can answer this one. So you felt that it was necessary to do that because you saw where things were going. What was the first thing? When did you first start seeing that something's going on here that's weird and something's not right about it?
I think that 9/11 triggered my deep patriotism, but then I think Obamacare.
Oh, really? Obamacare? I wasn't expecting that. Okay.
I think that because, again, I saw that as, hold on a minute.
The law, the way it was pushed through.
Both. And this notion that, wait a minute, you're going to tell people what they have to buy? Right. You're going to tell people they have to buy this? And for someone in the Supreme Court to say, well, that's just another form of taxation. No, it's not. Right. You've now taken someone's freedom away about how they're going to spend their money and what they're going to do in terms of covering their own health. This is a bridge too far. And that is really, and I'm feeling it in my stomach right now, you guys. I remember the nervousness and the nausea and the, you can't do this in America. Yeah. And little quick side story. My oldest sister worked for President Obama. So this was not a Thanksgiving dinner table topic, but it definitely, it was something where I couldn't help but be mad at her for her role in this whole thing.
Shamika and Will, that's interesting. I don't know if I've ever asked you that. Shamika, what was the first thing that you remember that made you say, I need to start speaking up? Something's going on that's really rotten in Denmark?
I think, if I remember correctly, maybe gay marriage, or just, I think during Obama's second term, even the talk about men being able to use the women's restroom, even back then, they were saying something about pronouns, like asking your children in kindergarten, what they wanted to be referred as. I remember looking at some old videos, one that I did when I was saying, like, this is stupid. I had a girl. Why would you even ask what pronoun she wanted to use? And I remember that time thinking, okay, here it is. I voted for this Black man. I voted for him twice. And now he's in office and all of this stupid shit is coming down the pipe. Like, I remember thinking, what in the world is going on here? And so it just made me kind of start paying more attention. And then I remember when, Trump was running and everybody was saying how much of a racist he was and how he didn't like Black people. But as I listened to him, I thought, gosh, I like him. Like, gosh, I understand what he's saying. And not only do I understand it, I agree. So it was just, I think, Obama actually is why I started to pay attention. I had a really close friend who was white, and I remember she was so upset the day after elections when Obama won, and she was like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. And I just remember thinking, I know she's not racist. Like, why is she so mad that this Black man won? Because of course, like I said, that was why I voted for him. But I wasn't racist. But
he wasn't Black. But
I remember just questioning, like, gosh, I really love this girl, and I know that she loves me, but she's so upset, and I did not understand why until, like I said, everything started to look different his second term, and I'm thinking, okay, something's wrong.
Right. Yeah. And Will, I want to hear your answer, but first I got to say, I am not, insecure, so I can say that I'm the weak link here, and I love doing the podcast with these two because they're the superheroes. But I thought about that because I have friends that send me your stuff like that. They'll be like, Will is on Dan and Amy in the morning, or they'll say, you should check out this book. Or they'll say, I have a friend, shout out to Stephanie, who's always like sending me clips of Shamika. I'm like, they're all my co-hosts. You think I don't know nothing against them, but I'm like, why are you sending me their clips? Funny.
They do me like that too. Don't feel bad.
Oh, that's funny.
I get a lot of Shamika content. I also get people in the inbox asking for Shamika's number pretty often.
Oh
no. Hey there.
Yeah, so, I don't know.
What would you're different because you're a professor, so you live in this space more than we do. But was there anything that made you kick it up a notch? I guess I don't know.
Are you talking to me?
That made me kind of think
to Will.
I was going to say, I'm not the most professional in this group. Let's go to Will.
Because he's a professor.
But so you're asking, is there something that made me think like the country is getting a little more screwed up?
I guess so.
I think so. First of all, I mean, I've seen stuff like that from the left and the right. I mean, like I was watching just friends of mine sparring online the other day, and like Jesse Kelly jumped in the conversation and was like, "We need a dictator."
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of nonsense in our political conversation right now. No, he's dead serious. Like the next no, but I mean, like the next commenter said something like, "Well, Weimar degeneracy requires Weimar solutions," and he was like, "Hell yeah!" And like the Weimar solution was Hitler. So, I mean, like you see all kind of stuff across the scale. But in terms of that kind of center left that in like US upper middle class life is just way more dominant in all the institutions, HR, DEI, all that. Yeah. What made me start noticing this? It was during like the Obama presidency, the Obama regime. And it was just like people started saying more and more shit that as an academic and a business consultant, I just knew wasn't true. So like Black Lives Matter was probably the big thing for me. Because, I mean, like one of the things that's just a known fact, if you're a criminal justice scholar, political scientist or whatever, is that like interracial crime is really rare. Person most likely to kill you is your wife. It's like 3% of violent index crime between blacks and whites. And that's like 80% black on white. It's just a fact. It's very low at baseline, and it's usually the minority group that commits more of it. If nothing else, there's more members of the majority. So when people started saying things like, Barack Obama, my son would have looked just like Trayvon.
Oh, yeah.
He would have been in that same situation. And you're thinking about this like, no, he wouldn't have. Right. Like, there's no chance that Barack Obama's son would be wandering around the hood at 1 a.m. getting into fist fights with the local neighborhood watch guy who he doesn't know. Like, this is just BS. But it just began building very rapidly. Like Michael Brown, he was a gentle giant, hands up, don't shoot. And then after Michael Brown, the whole "they are killing our black men" thing began. And I was looking at these cases, some of them in a professional role, and it was like almost all of these people, certainly Michael Brown, were unsympathetic criminals. Trayvon Martin was a younger guy, but like Alton Sterling, almost every one of these cases, and the total number each year was like
McDonald. Oh,
the Laquan McDonald shooting was an ugly shooting. It also, again, like they
he
should have
was a
prosecuted.
menace.
Yeah. But like they should have prosecuted some cops for that. But yeah, he was like a guy with a machete-sized knife wandering down the street, like slashing expensive cars. Like every one of these guys, whether or not you thought the police or the black man were more at fault, was like some kind of unsympathetic scumbag, bluntly, like in almost every case. And there were only like 20 cases a year. So that was the thing for me. Just like seeing this happen over and over again. The one that really red-pilled Jade, my partner, was Jacob Blake, because he was a rapist. Like she was already, I mean, she's a businesswoman. She's already a little bit to the right, but like it was just Jacob Blake was the guy who got shot because he went to his rape victim's house. Like there was an outstanding warrant saying he couldn't be there. He goes there. The victim calls the police, and Blake fights the police for like 5 minutes and goes for his knife, gets shot, doesn't even die. Like the officers did a really good job in that situation. And that's what led to the Kenosha riots. And the presentation was like a sweet, innocent man, beloved public entertainer, kind of mixing up two cases there, but was attacked for no reason. And it was just, as this went on and on and on, I think that's what really made me just realize this is complete crap. Like this is the thing I actually do research in. Like none of this is true.
Yeah.
Well, before I say mine, I have to give my shout out. Will already knows it's coming because I say it every time his name comes up. Jacob Blake was not shot 7 times.
Oh yeah,
I was just gonna say that because everybody kept saying he was not shot 7 times. But I think
what's the background there? He was shot at 7 times. He was shot
at 7 times. But bullets that don't hit you don't count, especially when you're coming at somebody with a knife. I think mine. He got
7 hot ones. I mean, it's like one of those narratives, like hands up, don't shoot. Like
when all those people on CNN kept going,
oh yeah,
little hands. I was like, could you stop? I mean,
please.
When you have to do that over and over and over again, it seems to me you're just trying to sell us a story.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
There's
they
also
were
a religious ritual element, but like just one final comment on this, and I also kind of want to hear Michelle's opinion, the female panelist here. A lot of these stories seemed like self-evidently not true. Like this New York bike thing, where the claim was that like this pregnant woman had intimidated a group of like 5 fighting men who happened to be black and stolen their bike. Like that was the story. Like she went up to them, bum rushed them. The guy was peacefully sitting on his bike. She took the bike from them and then started crying so they would back away. And she was going to like steal the bike and sell it.
You never been jacked by a pregnant white woman?
I have never
yeah. What are you trying to say here?
I don't know. I mean, there's so many ways to take that and run with it as a joke, but I mean, like, but no, like, just is it plausible to any of you guys that this pregnant, like, physician or physician's assistant was going to beat up 5 guys and take their bike? Am I missing something as a guy?
And we only see this one video, right? There could have been 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before, whatever. But that story was like, I don't know, it was so stupid, and it felt like it was manufactured somehow.
I didn't even want to comment on it.
But you're right. They do this to the victims, that suddenly George Floyd is having his funeral televised nationwide. Yes, it was a moment, and it happened right in my backyard. So I'm very familiar with the moment, and it was hideous and awful and all of that. But to then go and suggest that, this guy became some sort of a hero, we like forget a lot of the layers that led up to that moment.
Right.
George Floyd was another one of these guys. Also, like he robbed a pregnant woman allegedly by like sticking the gun to her belly. You can say we need to press charges against the cop, hit him with 5 for manslaughter. I mean, that's fine. Cops shouldn't murder people. Although even that's disputed. Like a new autopsy report seems to be circulating today. I mean,
I saw that.
I missed it.
I posted that too. So there were 2 George Floyd autopsies, and both have been available if you FOIA or whatever for a while. But a couple of accounts have simply posted a full unedited version of the George Floyd autopsy report. And something that I didn't know previously is that this is the only autopsy the quote unquote right-leaning one, that comes from a doctor that actually saw or touched George Floyd. Like the other one it's crazy as it sounds. The other one comes from two doctors that were hired by the family that watched the Floyd Chauvin struggle video and just speculated about it. I guarantee that's a fact.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an absolute reality. I believe the name is Chrissy Lane, but the person who was the lead anchor on the Minneapolis television station was fired during all this.
Yeah.
Because
her
she was
husband,
married to the police chief. Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, she wrote a book about this, and she goes
She's good
into
on the
detail.
show.
We're like, she pulled in, my guess would be like every favor she had, and on the journalistic and police side, she gets these documents, like real pros look at them. And yeah, that was the second George Floyd autopsy. It was people sitting in a room watching a video. So the first one is now out there, full, unedited, and it just says things like there was no damage to Mr. Floyd's neck. Like it lists all the drugs, not just like fentanyl, not what people knew in passing, but like methamphetamine, X per milligram. So again, you can still think it's maybe murder, possibly manslaughter, to sit on a guy whose heart is exploding. These are tough minute by minute situations. But the idea that like George Floyd was a hero, or even that George Floyd was sort of choked to death in this horrendous KKK kind of way, that's just all BS. It's not real. Again.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Go ahead.
I want to say mine because I think it takes us back to sports, and I know that Michelle's going to remember it and may have a comment about it. Apparently I'm the old school guy here because I beat you all, many of you by many years, Michelle only by a couple years, because it wasn't really the race and gender stuff we see now. I just saw things going towards a touchy-feely way. Let's focus on people's feelings, and that's going to be better for everybody. It just didn't feel right with me. I'm young at the time, so mine, Michelle, was Nikisha Sales.
Really?
That's what did it for me. Yes. When they let her limp out there and shoot a layup so she can break a scoring record. Me and my friend, who's all things sports, we're watching the sports. That's the game that's coming on. Villanova in Connecticut. See, we see her limping out there. What's going on? Why is Nikisha? Oh, I see what they're doing. And I turned to my friend and I said, how's that fair for the girl who holds the record?
That's a great point. Because no one thinks about the person whose record is being broken.
They claim they called her, but that still doesn't make it right.
No. Oh, you know what? That's really interesting.
And what I like about it is you can't say it's race or all this stuff. It's just it was the culmination of the, wow. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's none of my business. Who am I to judge? Getting rid of the score, running up the score because what about the kids' feeling? Let's not do scores. Let's participation trophy. That was the culmination because this is at a competitive level, and we're just going to let her break an all-time scoring record at an elite college.
No, that is amazing, and that was like a tipping point for you. That's remarkable.
Yep, that was it. Nikisha Sales.
That is so interesting.
And the funny thing is, later on, how many years later was that, Michelle? Well, they came back and they admitted it was wrong and we shouldn't have done it.
You know what? I don't remember. I don't even remember that they did that.
Yeah, they did that, but it was like 15 years later. Yeah, that probably wasn't the right thing to do. You think?
Oh, God. They don't go to that second level thinking in the moment. Nope. They stay at the first level thinking, this will be great. She'll break the record. She deserves it, and she deserves it. And if she weren't injured, she'd break it. Yeah. But the fact is she was injured. And you do think about all, we don't do a lot of second, third level thinking in our decision-making these days. And it's really, it's led to some really stupid stuff.
That was literally my title for these people. I called them intellectually lazy and emotionally weak surface thinkers. So whatever felt good when it first came to your head, that's the thing. So since we're back to sports, you did that, you stepped away. What did you see so you got the 9/11 and then you see the stuff, but how did you see sports change? Obviously, we all see the craziness of painting BLM and putting your feelings on the back of your jersey. But beyond that, for the sports fans who are like, well, why does everybody in the NBA have to be a three-point shooter, even if they can't shoot? Or, NFL being watered down because they're changing the rules, obviously with the good faith effort of protecting players. But now it's like not fun to watch or they care about the score. Well, how did you think the sports changed?
No, I thought it was impacted more by Colin Kaepernick. To me, that was the turning point.
Right.
Because, initially it was like he was sitting on the bench.
Right.
And then he talked to Nate Boyer, a former Seattle Seahawks player who had served and said, Colin, I'd really like to talk to you about this because that flag that you're boycotting, that anthem you're boycotting, that gets, that flag gets draped on the coffins of soldiers, my friends that don't come home from combat alive. And I'd really like to share this with you. So they sat down together before a game in San Diego when Chargers was still there. And he talked to Colin about it. And Colin said, well, what should I do? What if I knelt? Would that be more appropriate? And Nate Boyer said, well, I think it would be more appropriate than just ignoring the anthem. So Nate said, I'll stand next to you tonight during the anthem. You can do what you want to do, but I'm standing. Well, Colin knelt, and that was the beginning of the kneeling. But in addition to Colin kneeling during the anthem, he also was incredibly anti-cop. He said the worst things about the police, and the pig socks, all that kind of stuff that people remember.
So fake.
And it drew attention to him. And then, of course, he got some other guys to Eric Reed did it with him, and some people from other teams. And then, Trump didn't help things when he called him a son of a bitch, and you got to stand for the flag and all that. Now, Trump, I believe, was speaking for a lot of people who didn't.
Apparently, Colin too. Now that he came out against his parents.
Oh God. Yeah.
That's funny.
Wait, no. I do you one better, Shamika. Apparently, he was speaking for Brittany Griner now that she's back from Russia.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. It's amazing how people's perspectives get changed once they are introduced to other facets of life. But, then Colin continued this, and it really soured people on the NFL. And we saw in 2016, it took a ratings hit. It really did. The league, the ratings went down, and people say, oh, well, it was an election year and everyone was watching election coverage. And it's like, really? You think that people wouldn't take out just a few minutes to watch the NFL during election coverage? I mean, people wanted an escape, but people were mad. And I talked to fans, and I talked to people who were mad. You're out there, you're playing a game to make your paycheck. You're making more in a week than I'll make all year. And you're going to tell me not to salute my flag and not to stand for the anthem. And you're going to tell me cops are all racist. And really, this is where you're going? It just made people mad. Right. And what was interesting? I don't know if you guys remember the name Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, the former Denver Nugget,
I was watching sports then.
Yes, he was the first one,
Point
really,
guard,
but he was
he
such
took
an
the fines
anomaly
and everything.
Yes,
but at least in his respect, he took the punishment. He's like, fine, I'm
He did, and he was such an outlier. And it was at a time when I think patriotism was higher in this country, or more prevalent. Right. But Kaepernick, that moment changed things. And then the Trump thing, and then following George Floyd, that was the next season was, how are we going to address racism? How are we going to talk to people about this? But see, that's not the NFL's job. Now they want to do it. Mm-hmm. They have every Tuesday off. They can do it in their off time. People didn't want that. Now, some people loved it. Some people absolutely loved it. They loved it. Like you said, wearing your feelings on the back of your helmet, it was just, and look, I'm so grateful that I got to cover the NFL for as many years as I did, but that doesn't mean I'm a sycophant and that I'm an apologist for the NFL. I think they made some major mistakes at that time.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because the kneeling was so toxic at the time. But to me, as much as I respect the country and the flag, that's nothing to me compared to what happened afterwards. I mean, you had celebrities and wealthy people getting in front of the mic in post game after scoring 32 points, but turning the ball over and losing. And instead of asking them about the loss, he wants to tell me how the country hates him and why. We talk about LeBron. Who's the guy I was about to say the point guard from the Atlanta Hawks. Damn, I'm old. Doc Rivers. Rivers crying, talking about, why don't they like us?
That,
I'm like,
and I worked with Doc. I worked with Doc for a number of years, and I really liked working with Doc. And I was disappointed in that, because I wanted to know what made him believe that. And, people were just pointing to these events that really had, that these police interactions
isolated,
that were isolated, and no one wants to No one wants to do the math, it seems. No one really wants
but
to.
will. No one will. But how is
No
it
one
going
but
to?
will.
My issue was it wasn't going to fix anything. So give them their argument. So you get out there, you paint the floor with Black Lives Matter, paint the whole floor black. They're just playing on blacktop, right? I mean, has it stopped police shootings? I mean, do white people go up and hug black people on the street now? I mean, what did you think was going to happen other than making people mad, making people not want to watch your sport and that kind of thing? And to that end, so you came out, you spoke about this stuff, and obviously some people, you know, I know it because all your friends and everybody else said that. Some people attack you, others agree with you, but they won't say it in public. But isn't it interesting how you just became extremist all of a sudden? I mean, I've watched your piece on, you know, as bad as the View was. Dan Le Batard, wow,
Oh God, yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
They were, at least the View was attacking your views and saying they don't agree with them and attacking them with no substance because that's what they do. But Dan and his crew were attacking you by saying stuff you didn't say.
Yeah, that was brutal. That was a complete and utter ambush. I know that Shamika knows it. She knows it well because Jason did a great job of laying it out that they had sent me this invite. Oh, you retired. We want to talk about your incredible career.
Right.
And
why are you a racist?
And yeah. Oh yeah. And by the way, you're racist. It was awful.
Yeah.
But it taught me some valuable lessons. I didn't do my due diligence on that podcast for sure, but I had worked with Dan Le Batard in the past, and I thought I had a friendly audience there. I did not.
But does that show just how bad it is, though?
It is bad.
We've gotten?
It is bad. But then I talk to people like you, and I go, you know what? There are so many sane people out there, and people like Jennifer Say, who gave up her career at Levi's, as you guys know.
Right.
And people who are willing to have the courage to say, you know what, enough of this. And you can call me whatever you want to call me. Mm-hmm. I'm still going to say what I believe. And I hope I'm seeing it right in that there's a contagion going on here of more people being willing to do this. I mean, there's safety in numbers, right?
Right.
I still have plenty of people in my circle who can't and won't go public about stuff, you know. Right. Even the trans and sports things. It's like, people, where are we?
Right.
Where are the women saying that, you know, women's sports need to be left? Where is everybody? Hello.
It is interesting that Caitlyn Jenner can say that, but nobody else can.
You know, Riley Gaines has been the most outspoken, and she's really been brave about going out there and doing it. I wish there were more. Right. And I don't understand where that voice is.
Will ask anything away if you like, but I want to ask you too, you know, about what might the next tipping point be. I think we talked about it in one of our more recent episodes, but first of all, you would think if the trans issue can't do it, nothing can. All right, but it didn't. So now I got a new one. If the migrant issue can't do it, nothing can.
Okay, I think you kind of faded out a little on my side. What was the second part of what you said?
Yeah, I was just wondering what you think would be the tip, and what if is there an issue that will drag some of these people who are afraid to speak out? I said if the trans issue didn't do it, maybe the migrant issue.
My position on this, and I want to hear what Shamika says, obviously, but like my position on this is actually pretty depressing. Like, I think people will pretend to say the stupidest shit imaginable so they can be socially acceptable. And I don't honestly think you have to look further than the history of religion. Like, I don't want to mock anyone's personal set of beliefs, but I mean, if you tell people that there are 5,008 armed gods that control your destiny, and if you're going to get kicked out of the city state if you deny that, people are going to say there are 5,008 armed gods that control your destiny. So, I mean, that's just a reality. We've seen this all throughout history. Like, you know, pray to the goddess Athena before battle against the Persians. Like, that's actually one of my favorite spiritual beings. But is there an objective reality to that? You know, probably not. You know, so the same thing with a lot of this. Like, I think two things here. One, I think people absolutely know what reality is and feel subconsciously the same way all of us do. Like I've told you, I did those. I took about a month where I just had fun and did those very large polls on Twitter where I had the Survey Monkey link. And I'm not publishing them. I just wanted to see what people said. But one of them, I asked the question, do you believe that some women have 9-inch penis? Just kind of as a joke, because like if you are fully on board with trans ideology, the answer is yes. Like there's absolutely a human rights campaign hoodie that says, excuse me,
Yeah.
some women have dicks. So, I mean, I asked my audience, and there are a lot of bros in there, but it's also like everyone's feminist girlfriend or wife, 100,000 people. I asked them this question, and 98% of people said no, absolutely not. 2% of people said yes. And I'm pretty sure that's close to the real percentage in mainstream, again, like middle class society. 2% of people are trans. So that I think is true across all these issues. Like, I think most people aren't racial bigots of any kind, but when like Tucker Carlson, for example, says very few societies would allow 5 million people from a completely different cultural, ethnic, and economic background to walk into the country every year, everyone just sort of knows that's true. Now, I think a lot of those people become great, hardworking Americans, actually, but like there's obviously like a huge level of adjustment you have there. Obviously, people need to do it legally. Everyone knows that. But yeah, I don't think anyone disagrees with us on that. I think that people are just being cowardly and lying. So, I mean, to really beat this stuff, what you have to do is, first of all, people with platforms that can, like all of us, need to say the obvious. So people don't have to stand up and be the first to say the obvious. They can cite a best-selling book by Tafoya or Love or whatever. I see a couple of us Hadleys in the background, including me, a capitalist. But I mean, so that's the first thing. Beyond that, I don't really know if there's a second thing. I think most people will do what they think they need to do to get along in life, get that next promotion. I mean, most people don't have extraordinary job security. What you have to do is create the climate where the ordinary person can talk. And I think that one of the ways I try to do that is by pointing out that almost everyone agrees with the ordinary person. And that actually is kind of practical because the other side of this controls a lot of what you could call discourse. So most people probably don't know that 98% of people agree with them. And I think pointing that out effectively is what might change the dialogue. I don't think there's one thing that would really push people past the line if they thought 98% of people disagreed with them.
Well, can I just ask a quick question on that then? Because I think, like I would have thought that the 2022 midterms would have been a referendum on all this craziness. And I thought I like a lot of people expected this red tsunami, and it didn't happen. And it made me wonder, are we just like, did we just really have that many bad candidates? Was abortion just that scary of an issue? Did it really change everybody's voting patterns? What were the reasons that Biden got this gift of not a red tsunami?
I'm going to ping. You want to go, Will?
Yeah, I want to hear your take too, but like my just quick answer as like a poli-sci guy would be, yeah, it's basically what you're bringing up. I mean, like the group that shifted most away from the GOP was suburban women. So I think, and I see this a lot because I'm on Twitter, Facebook, like it's what I do as a break from meetings, so on. People see all my stuff online, but when you're in these venues, I think a lot of people are starting to notice that there's an equally crazy kind of anti-woke backlash. Like one of the polls, the only one that got an unexpected result was me asking if people wanted to ban sodomy, because I thought that there were very few like true homophobes left. And a lot of people were like, yeah. And again, excuse the language, but like people shouldn't have anal sex. People shouldn't go down on women. A man should never be submissive. Like all these kind of crazy answers in the comments. And I think if I were reading through that as a suburban mom who trained as a lawyer, I might think, well, these people are absolutely nuts. The same thing with abortion, like the states that just defaulted back to status quo pre-Roe abortion laws. I mean, in most of those states, DNCs, abortions are either illegal or they're illegal after 6 weeks. I mean, I'm not an expert on human anatomy, but I mean, the whole idea of I'm late implies that you don't know that you might need an abortion for a certain period of time. So again, that's not a realistic policy, whatever your personal moral takes. So yeah, I think it was just that, kind of rambling on here, but yeah, it was abortion policy. It was these other takes, not being against trans ideology, which everyone is, but being against, say, baseline gay rights. Like the idea we're going to make the rainbow a toxic symbol. Saw someone post today. A lot of people that are just like regular moms or dads are like, no, I'm not really messing with that.
I have another take. Not that I disagree with that one. I said, I think probably on the show, depending on who we were talking with at the time, that the aggressive reaction to Roe was going to have a backlash. I mean, do whatever you're going to do, but it's like the next day. I mean, be pragmatic like the Democrats is what I thought. I'm like, so they repeal it. You have an election in 2 months. Nah, wait till December, right? It just see why the next day do you have to say rah rah? So I agree with that, but I don't think it's number one. I'm going to be negative, kind of somber like Will's previous response. I think it's apathy. Look at the turnout in all of these elections. So like you look at, let's take Chicago, the most recent one. Brandon Johnson beats Paul Vallis, and everybody's like, "What? They hated Lori Lightfoot," and they're like, "She didn't make the runoff." And we're like, maybe this is the tide turning. And then somebody's just as bad as her, he won. Yeah, but the turnout was 22%. Right. So a lot of people are just like all of our leaders are crazy. It's the old Brewster's Millions, right? None of the above. So a lot of the people just like, I don't want what any of you are selling. So their views might still be center left or center right, but you didn't get the tsunami because so Will might be right about those issues and Michelle might be right about we didn't have the best candidates. But some of the people just didn't care. So they weren't coming for Dr. Oz or Fetterman, right? Mm-hmm. So enough of the people who were fired up on the left or right, maybe of the extreme left and extreme right, the extreme left won in some cases, but most people didn't vote. I mean, and it's not new. De Blasio won his last election with 20% of the vote. It's not a referendum.
Yeah, particularly in big urban centers like that, because really the people who have the biggest stake in cities like New York and Chicago are the business people and the people that work there, but they don't generally live right there.
Right.
So they don't vote in a lot of those elections, and then they just have to.
Right. And then the flip side is the union people vote and the city workers vote, but all the cities don't. I don't think New York does, but I know in Chicago they have a mandate you have to live in the city to work for the city, right? So all of the people who get to vote in the city election have a vested interest to vote for the guy. I'm a right-wing guy, but of the two candidates, the pro-business guy is not going to give me all my union goodies. So I'm going to vote for the other guy because it's in my financial best interest. So you put all that together. I think that's kind of reason. And unfortunately, it's hard for the Republicans because they're going to have to face that in every election. Shamika, it looks like you're going to say something.
Yeah, I have to. So y'all can let me in. So I was never expecting a red wave simply because I think people are stupid. I think if you had asked me this maybe in like 2015, I think I would have been more hopeful that people could actually see the light and change. But I think after 2016, 2017, 2018, I started seeing that I still was a little hopeful because I'm like, okay, they'll go for change, but not racist change. Okay, they just don't like the racists in office, But 2020 came around and I saw people that I thought had heart and I thought had guts and I thought had common sense actually think that there was a virus that if you were standing up in a restaurant, you needed a mask on. But once you sat down, this virus would just fly over your head.
No, it was the heat from the food. The heat from the food killed the virus.
I mean, I could not believe the stupidity of people feeling like we need to walk down one aisle of the grocery store and then walk up the other.
The arrows. I forgot about the arrows.
The arrows.
I'm saying to myself, people are so stupid. And I lost a lot of hope during this pandemic just because there were a lot of people that I looked at as smart or I looked up to that I realized was just dumb. And so now I don't know if I think the transgender or the immigration will, change people's minds because so many people are stupid. And I mean,
so they're going to have to lose everything is what you're saying.
They're going to have to lose. Some people
are just
going to have to do that because they're really, really stupid. Like
that's a scary thought though, isn't it? that it's going to have to be even more painful.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing people, I'm like, what about the economy? Like the gas is high, food is high. And that still hasn't changed people's mind. We had here, I don't know if this was countrywide, but Circle K was offering gas like 40 cents off or something like that. People were lined up around, like traffic was all in the streets to get 87 for 285. And I'm just thinking, y'all know that's still higher than what it was, you know.
And at 10 gallons, that's only $4.
Yeah.
You spend it half of your day for $4.
I'm just like,
what
my
is your
God.
hourly rate?
No, I agree with you. I think there are really a lot of dumb people out there, but I think there probably always have been. Like I'm a big history buff. I love to read history. I love to read biographies. I'm in the middle of Cherno's book on Washington right now. And it's just, you discover that there's been a lot of stupidity throughout the ages and, you know, a lot of politicking throughout the ages. And so I'm not sure. I mean, we think that we're in uncharted territories in some ways. And it's, and, you know, in some ways we are, because the digital world has made, yes, technology has made things different. And this damn coronavirus you talked about scared the hell out of people. And as you said, people chose to do things during that pandemic that you ask yourself, oh my gosh, what if they went one further and said, you know, you have to take this pill every morning in order to stay away from the coronavirus? Would you just blindly take the pill every morning? I mean,
Take the pill, yes.
I bet people would.
Yeah.
They would.
Yeah.
Wow. So what do you think this goes? What do you think it's going to be, either the way out or the next issue that comes up, or, you know, something, some tidbit you can give us to give us some hope? Or what do you think we can do to push back against some of this stuff, Michele?
My fear is that it's going to take some international incident, or like Shamika just said, some serious pain, for people to wake up and go, what the hell were we thinking?
Yeah, I don't think we hit rock bottom. I hear a lot of people say they think we have. I don't think so. I think the crazy is still
rock
coming.
bottom looks like?
I don't know.
What does it look like? You don't know?
I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily violence in the streets, but it is. I mean, people got to get mad about stuff. I mean, I said earlier in the show that, you know, a lot of the people, unlike you, thank you again, but other people have to be driven, forced to do something, right? I got fired, so I'm going to speak up. This happened, so I do this. But unless they have to do it, they're not going to do it. So I think something's going to happen that forces them to, like with the trans issue. A lot of people, like Will said, know what a man is and know what a woman is, but they're either silent about it, or they might say, just let the people do whatever they want, which is totally fine. But then they'll come home and say, somebody told my 6-year-old, you know, that he could do this and this. And they're saying, well, why are you mad now? When it wasn't your 6-year-old, you weren't upset. See, that's why I say you and I were in common. When I first started talking about this, Michele, I didn't have any issues. No problem with my kid in school. I'm Black, so nobody was telling me that, you know, you're an oppressor and you need to apologize. I just noticed it was wrong. And I'm like, somebody needs to say something. And since so many white people are afraid to say it, maybe if some Black people spoke up, they would do it. So that's the reason why I did it. But most people aren't going to do that. Most people are going to say, you know, unless I have to, you know, I'm just going to live my life and do my thing. I unfortunately know a lot of people that don't even know really what's going on. They hear the headlines, they hear stuff, the noises on the outskirts, but they're not living in it. They live their lives. They don't pay attention. So I send them news stories and they're like, really? This is real? You know, so how we reach them, I don't know, because they're not in one place. I think nothing changes until we find a way to get them involved, because, you know, the few people on Twitter and academics and things of that nature is just not going to be enough. And politically, I mean, most people only vote every 4 years.
Yeah, you know, you're right about that. And there's one other issue that you mentioned, the trans issue and the migrants. The fact that fentanyl is killing so many people, it's amazing to me that isn't more of a motivator about China and the border and the border, right? People's eyes. I mean, both of those things. So
it's like when you mention the border, it's funny. Everybody says Mexico. I'd say 1% of those people are Mexican.
Yeah,
they're not Mexican. Mexico's
totally
not a third world country,
right?
And that's just the ones who are coming from Central America and Latin America. But you don't think somebody who wants to do the country harm, like, you know, vis-a-vis 9/11, or somebody who wants to bring drugs in, aren't going to say, well, if that's the easy way to get here, let's go down there and then come up. They could
no kidding.
Everywhere. They're catching people from Egypt and Iran and all kind of places.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, yeah, until they realize that, I don't know. I got to ask you, last thing before we go. You mentioned something about, you know, trying to be canceled and that kind of thing. I noticed your video, your interview with Pete McCullough's still up. They took ours down. I mean, I'm not trying to get you canceled. I just don't think it's fair.
I think I have two of them. One was with John Stockton and Pete.
Yep.
And one was just with Dr.
Okay. They
with
took that
Dr.
one down.
McCullough. I think they took that one down. I think they left the one with John Stockton up.
Yeah, that
Although,
one was up.
John has been put through the ringer as well. But then they took another one of mine down, but we appealed it.
Mhm.
And they said, okay, fine, we'll put that one back up, because they were going to put me in jail for 2 weeks.
Which one was that? Do you remember?
I'm trying to remember what it was. And isn't that funny? I can't remember. It was not controversial at all.
But that's crazy.
Right.
I mean, Peter might have said some things that they don't like, but Will challenged him, right? There was like 10 minutes of him and Will going at it. That's just a vigorous debate. Why would you?
And they took that down?
Yeah,
they took that down.
Yeah, the audio.
The fact that we can't handle
iTunes, but not
the
on
fact
video.
that we can't handle debate is a freaking shame, and it's embarrassing. It's a freaking embarrassment to this country that we can't handle debate, and that we feel triggered by pro-life pamphlets on the table. All this nonsense, this being triggered, these microaggressions. I'm sorry. And I've had people saying, well, you're not Black, you don't know. I'm like, we all have things that we've been put through. And I could give you my list, and I'm sure we're going to have the victim Olympics, and it's not going to be close to your victimhood.
Right.
But you know what? Here's the quintessential thing. Joy Behar says that, Clarence Thomas and Tim Scott are from the school of pull yourself up from your bootstraps.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good. I'm from the school of understanding systemic racism.
Right.
Which of those platforms would you rather show the youth of America? That you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or that you're a victim?
Exactly.
Yeah, there's also just an element of absurdity to Joy Behar, who's a 70-year-old wealthy white woman, talking about how these two Black men don't understand what it's like to be Black. Like, it's in living color level stuff.
No
question.
question.
I watched that and literally just started laughing. Like, I thought it was a joke or a deep fake when she started saying, like, but unlike them, I understand. They don't understand. That's why they vote Republican. It was unique.
It was quite something. I could tell you stories about my time there, but we're out of time.
Yeah, but the thing about it is they would say the same thing, just like they said about them to the three of us. They use you're not Black. They'll just say, well, that's just your experience. What about everybody else? They conveniently want to go to the collective, but then want to go to the individual without. I mean, you're fighting shadows with them. I don't even.
They will say that you are not representative of the Black community, as they said about Clarence Thomas. He doesn't represent the Black community.
Right.
So what do you got to do to represent? I guess,
but
Joy Behar,
right? Yeah. You got to be poor, uneducated, and in the criminal justice system, because that's what they think all Blackness is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
then none of those women represent the Black perspective either. Then on The View,
you basically just have to agree with conventional liberal cliches. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. Like Nicole Hannah-Jones once slipped, I think, after a couple drinks in the evening, and just said this. Like, we all know there's a difference between being Black and being politically Black. You know what I mean?
Right.
And she got so ridiculed that she took it down. But that's basically the idea. Like, you're Black if you support welfare policies that give slightly more per capita to Blacks than to whites. That's what it means. You're a conventional liberal.
Right.
Like, I mean, culturally, like, I'm light-skinned, but I mean, I'm pretty Black. Like, I teach at a historically Black college, still awkwardly play basketball, I mean, but that doesn't matter. No, I mean,
all the Black things.
I'm 40, but it's just, that's not what it means. It doesn't mean like you live in a Black community,
right?
Which I actually do. I'm pretty close to KSU Hilltop. It means that you agree with conventional, again, middle class liberal cliches.
And because if it means that you live in a Black community, they would all be eliminated too. But
absolutely,
exactly.
Michelle, would you come back?
That's really funny, actually.
I would love to come back, and I would love to have all of you on my podcast too.
We could have kept going for another hour. Look, Shamika's raising her hand, and you thought you were going to be boring. You were not boring. Check.
Yeah.
Well, but Shamika didn't get to talk very much. That's the only problem. I feel bad.
Thank you so much. Thank you for saying that.
The star is being repressed. Sexism.
It's oppression.
So I have two things to say before you go.
Okay.
One, you mentioned Peyton Manning. So I was wondering if you know him, because that's my cousin. I like to tell everybody that just so maybe it'll get to him and he'll be interested to see, is this Black woman really some kin to me, and want to take a test and see that I am telling the truth. Secondly, I would like to know if you ever covered the WNBA or know someone who did. And if so, does Brittany Griner have a penis? Like a little one, like just because something's not quite right there. And
I tried to prepare you, Michelle. I don't know if you saw me take my glasses off, but when she said, "Did you cover the NBA?" I knew it was coming. I didn't know what it was, but I knew you didn't want to hear it.
Do you know that when the WNBA, I covered the first, I think, 5 seasons for Lifetime Television. I was the play-by-play announcer.
I'm sorry.
Reggie Miller was my analyst. He and I are dear friends.
His sister's one of the best basketball players I've ever seen in my life.
No question. And she was a coach. She was the coach of the Phoenix Mercury for a while. But as far as Brittany Griner, not my era.
Just ignore her.
She's
The
funny.
only
It's
time
hard
I've
to
ever
ignore
seen
funny,
Reggie
man.
Miller really get mad is when Chicago Bulls fans would chant Cheryl, Cheryl, making fun of the fact that his sister is actually a better basketball player.
He was.
Like until he was 17 or so, never won a game against her from everything I've ever heard.
No, but he's proud of her. Don't ever get it wrong. He is.
Well, she is Michele Tafoya, former sportscaster and host of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Michelle, it's been great having you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Country to say, God bless the US of A, land of the free and a home of the brave. God get all of the praise. I got a country to say, cause I'm Patriot J and I'm saving a day.